The founding president of this august institution, Joshua Reynolds, had a mission, first of all, to elevate the status of art in Britain, but also there was a hierarchy of different subjects. And for him, history was the highest form of art. Now, I know you have an issue with academic history painting, but it seems to me you are a history painter in the 21st century. Is this something you would agree? Is that a description you'd agree with? And if not, why not?
It's difficult what you mean with historic painter. There are some, for example, Meissonier, Defregger and things. They illustrated special moments in a battle, and they did really figurative, really explicit paintings, and they are very boring. And I'm not this kind of historic painter. I use history as a material, like a clay, and I do something out of this clay.
Yeah, but I suppose in a sense one could argue that is a history painter in the 21st century. That's how history painting would be now, because in a post-photographic age, the illustration of historic events no longer has a function for artists.
Yes, there's a big difference between a painting and a photo. So, because a photo takes always a moment. It gives the image of a moment. It's just this moment. It's nothing else. But a painting has a lot of layers, and it goes down, and it's not the moment. It's more than the moment. It's more than a year. It's more than the human time. It's the geological time and the cosmic time, even.
What's the relationship between photography and your painting? Because sometimes you use photography as the base, and other times there seems to be no photographic elements at all. What's the relationship?
No, I use photographs as material. I work on it. I take it for eine Vorlage. What is eine Vorlage?
A sketch or
like a sketch. But mostly I work with it. I paint over. I destroy the photograph, and then the painting comes up.
Let's get the war out of the way, because you've said comically that whenever the British want to talk to you about your work, or whenever the BBC film you, they always get obsessed with the Second World War. But it is important that you were among the first, if not the first, artist of your generation to deal with a kind of buried Nazi past in Germany in the late 60s. And actually you did it in painterly form and photographic form, these kind of occupations or heroic symbols with the Nazi salute. Could you just explain, what was the context? How did that come about? What inspired you to do that?
It was a personal thing. It was not a political thing. I thought I have to find out what was this. Because at home and at school, I think we had 2 weeks or 3 weeks about this time in school in historic lessons, and that was it. So it was nothing really deep, and it was not what it should be. When you look at the events, at the horrible things. And so I wanted to find out what it is, and I wanted to find out how I would have been reacted, because this is the most important thing, that you know something about yourself. So to find out how you would be reacted in this time, you find out about yourself, what you are and what you would have done.
What conclusions did you come to then when you asked yourself what you would have done if you'd been a part of that particular moment in history?
I think I saw that human beings can be the most wonderful, the most artistic, the most poetic men or women, and in the same times you can fall down. You have always two sides in your soul or in your body, and you have to reflect a lot and to study a lot to find the right way.
When those works were first shown in Germany, we know when they were shown in Venice in 1980, there was a big critical furore. What was the response of your teachers or your colleagues or your friends to those occupations and heroic symbol pieces?
Some thought I'm a neo-fascist, some thought it's too much. Some thought it's immoral, and the reaction was very heavy and negative. And the first, I made my career in America. I made in the 80s. Had shows in America because the Germans didn't want me. It's clear. And it was a German Jews who fled to America who discovered me, who saw that I treated a theme that was not treated in those times. Today we know all about, every week is another emission in television in Germany about this time. But in those times there was nothing.
Did the response of people surprise you? I mean, did you suspect that people may be offended and you wanted to provoke, or was it a genuine act of discovery? You wanted to see what the response would be?
No, I didn't want to provoke, because I just did it because I wanted to know about me. And I was not surprised either, because as an artist you know that they don't like you in the beginning. It's normal.
When he said at the Royal Academy, full of an august audience that have come to pay homage or listen, when did you first realise that you wanted to be an artist? I mean, was this something you did as a teenager? Was it something that you felt as a child? Can you remember when you thought that being an artist was the thing that you would do? Because you read law at university.
I remember very well, because I know that first, when I was a kid, I wanted to be Jesus, because I thought that's the most wonderful, the most highest being. Then I thought, that's not possible, I want to be the Pope, And this I gave up too, and when I had given up this, and I knew that the artist is better than all of this.
That's mind-boggling. I mean, one could say, as an Englishman, what is it with German artists and wanting to be Jesus? Because Max Ernst famously did the piece, didn't he, where he imagined himself as Jesus, and there was the story of his father who...
But they told me I was very raised Catholic, really Catholic, in a small village, and there was a priest, and all my uncles was priests, and it was really Catholic. And the supreme being you could be, it was Jesus, there was nothing above. And
so, I think probably I'm on a rocky slope here, but do you think there's any connection between being an artist and the notion of being a creative being and a connection with a kind of God complex? Do you think artists sometimes have God complexes?
There can be a complex, but I don't have this complex anymore. But I think what artists do, they do a new connection between things, and they create another, I don't want to say another world, but they create another conjunctions between things. And this is really something what you didn't see before. I wouldn't work if I wouldn't be surprised from time to time from what I'm doing. And I think God was surprised too when He made the world, how bad it is.
That's a very interesting point that you say you wouldn't be an artist if you didn't surprise yourself from time to time. As you get older, more mature, allegedly, that you make all sorts of work. Do you find that making work gets easier or more difficult, or it still feels the same? And do you surprise yourself more or less, or roughly the same as you've always done?
I think it's both. It's easier and it's more difficult. It's easier because I have certain procedures. I can if a painting stucks, if it doesn't go on, I have a procedure I put it out in the sun, or I put it in the rain, or to do something. I have certain methods who go on. On the other side, it's more difficult because it's difficult to do something completely contrary what you do now, because you are older, you are in a certain rail, and it's difficult to bring you out of this rail. For this reason, it's more difficult.
Do you have strategies or things that you try and do to get yourself out of doing what is familiar or what seems easy? Do you try and make things difficult for yourself in the studio?
Yes, I tried. For example, last year I did very small things. I thought, no more paintings, just watercolors. And to do a watercolor is completely different. It's a completely different process because you do it and you cannot correct it. When you do oil painting, you can paint over. In 30 years, you can take over. You can paint over. But a watercolor, you have to decide for the moment. So I trained me to do something else.
It's interesting. You mentioned watercolors, and you've been doing those recently. You also had a shoulder injury, so I suppose that may have had something to do with watercolors. But the exhibition here at the Academy will begin with watercolors, and I think people are very curious about the way that they see your career, because it's clear that you develop themes or series, and then you seem to finish them, but you always then come back, and things always get reformulated. There's often a connection. I'm just curious, though, about, as you're thinking with Kathleen Soriano, the curator of your exhibition, about the retrospective, history's clearly complex, but do you have a sense of your career having a vague sense of a linear evolution? Because that's how we try and make sense of our own lives retrospectively. It's just a chronology of years, but then, of course, things are complicated within that. How do you see your career?
I have problems with a linear rising up to get higher and higher and higher. I think more in circles. I think everything comes again on another level, perhaps, but everything comes again and again and again. And this linear movement, it's for the Catholicism and for the communism. It's good that I think we come to the end of the history. The man will be happy, and if we have killed 500 million, then it will be the paradise, you know. But so it didn't work, you know. It didn't work to think on this linear perspective.
Do you have a sense of seeking perfection's, I think, the wrong word, but do you have a kind of platonic sense each time you start a work that it could be the best thing you've ever done? Are you seeking some sort of perfection with each work that you do?
I wouldn't say perfection, I would say precision. Precision? Yeah. It has to be as precise as you can do it for the moment. And yes, I try to do, when I start something, I try to do it better than before.
You said recently that that art, in a sense, is the quest for the truth. It can never realize it, but it's, I don't know if I'm paraphrasing, but it gets close sometimes. Is that right? Is that what you think?
Yeah, the truth is a difficult word.
It is, yeah.
It's a big word, you know, and when, you know, for example, Heidegger, when he wrote about art, he wrote about art as a truth, the seek for the truth. And we know that the truth, we never get it. There's no truth in the world. That doesn't exist. But if you shake the things, if you make new connections, and then you can find another truth, and you can say, for this moment, this is perhaps the truth, but you know always that you will lose it because the development will be as that at the end there is no truth.
So,
but it's a big effort to find it.
So, is there an inevitable futility in what you do?
Fertility?
Futility.
Futility.
Well, answer the fertility as well, but start with futility.
It's primordial, all. You know, we don't have any sense in our life. You know, I don't know how much people can tell you they see a sense why they are born. They know where they are born. We don't know why we are here. You know, there's an evolution. In 260 million years ago, there was a big catastrophe, and a meteorite killed 97% of all the livings in the earth. And then the rest, from the rest, we was the evolution, and we came out of this rest. But we don't know why. Who managed this? It's amazing. You get desperate when you ask yourself why you are here. Who is a big manager of all this? And so, as an artist, you create some sense. You create some sense who doesn't stay perhaps long, but you do a primordial. You can no.
Primordial, yeah.
A futile sense.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a familiar trope or idea that artists, one of the primordial reasons why they're compelled to make art, one maybe to make sense of the world, the other is to affirm the fact that they are here, that they exist. I'm interested in the place of yourself in your art, because again, at the beginning of the exhibition, people will see these beautiful self-portraits that you made, starting in watercolor. But you have returned to self-image or self-portraiture on occasions through your career, but it's not a dominant motif at all. Where do you place the self? How much of your work is a self-portrait, and how much of that is a distraction? Because people often want to read the artist's personality or themselves into that work. Where do you sit in the broad body of your work? As a detached creator or someone embedded within it?
I don't feel so much as a creator ex nihilo. I feel more as a point where a lot of streams go through, and some of the particles of the stream stays with me and provoke something and create something. And for this reason, I cannot give you my position. I am in a stream. I'm in different streams. I'm held by a lot of lines going down and up and in any direction.
That's interesting, because I remember having a conversation with you where you talked about history as this kind of inevitable flux, and in a sense, there's something in parallel with what you just said about you being a stream or a part of that, I suppose.
Yes, I'm in a stream. I cannot hold a point, you know. I pretend sometimes I have a point. When I finish the painting, I pretend that this is finished and this is fixed and this is now done. But it's a pretension, you know. You cannot really be fixed.
In the recent lectures you gave in the Collège de France, one of the themes, and it was also a theme you gave for a prize you won in Germany a few years ago, you talked about the ideas of borders and boundaries. And I think that's a very interesting subject, because you just said that your work, I mean, it's fixed, but it isn't fixed. But there's this kind of flux. Let's talk a little bit about borders and boundaries and thresholds, because that was something that was important to you from childhood, wasn't it?
Yes, I've reflected about borders a lot, because because my meaning is it's all illusion. You don't have really facts, you know, and a border is an illusion. For example, you as a border, the skin is a border in a way, but there are particles from the cosmos. They can go through. They go through the Earth even and come out on the other side. It's what is this called? These particles, G. You know this? There's no physician here. Nanos, no, something like that. So you are always durchflossen, transfluid for elements of Strahlen.
Radiation, yeah.
Radiations and things. So you have not really borders.
So you mean even the most, what we think is the ultimate border, our body is...
And I had the experiment where I grew up, and on the border of the Rhine, we had a house. It was perhaps 1 or 2 kilometers of the Rhine. There was a dam, a dam. And in the spring, when the Rhine got higher, then in our cellar was all of a sudden water. So there was the water of the Rhine. But the Rhine was a border between France and Germany. So the border came to our cellar. So it was an experiment that a child did, you know. It's interesting for borders.
That's wonderfully vivid, actually, that as a child you were told what the border was and then the border came to you. Did that seem absurd? Because and just hearing a conversation with you now, and also elements of your work that I'd like to touch on in a minute, you have been interested, I think, in the absurdity of some things that human beings do. Did that seem absurd to you at the time?
Not at all. I think a child never thinks something is absurd. They take it like it is. They take it in, and they don't judge it. You know, it's like it is. So for this reason, what I got as a child, is so wonderful because we didn't reject it. We didn't do nothing with it. We just let it in, and it's now there, and it creates a new world.
Let's look back at the end of your childhood now, and the idea that you studied law. Why did you study law? Why did you stop studying law? And has law had any impact at all on your practice as an artist?
I studied law not to be a lawyer. I studied law because I had a complex. I thought I don't need art school. It's all nonsense there. I'm already an artist, I thought. So I don't need art school, but I want to be in a university. So I chose just one discipline. I chose law because I like the language so much. You know, because the language of the law is so artificial, so far alive from life. It's like art, you know. I don't know if you read, some are lawyers perhaps here, when you read a text, a really long text, it can be one phrase and one page, you know? And it's really wonderful because it has nothing to do with life. And so I thought I want to study this, it's nice, and I was always interested also in constitutional law, because that's how we are organized, or how a democracy is organized with a constitution. And so I read a lot of Radbruch and Montesquieu, and Carl Schmitt was a great constitutional lawyer. He made the Constitution of Israel later, you know, Carl Schmitt. And and then once I stopped and was going to the art school because I thought I needed it.
So law was a kind of parallel world, it was a parallel discourse, a parallel language. That's what attracted you. Or the philosophical aspects of law appealed to you?
Yes, the philosophical aspect, also that means the law of the constitution, because civilization starts with a law, it's clear. And also the story of the law. We depend in Germany from the Roman law. And this is transferred to the German, it's now changed, but it still has its foundation in the Roman law. So I studied das römische Recht, the Roman law. But what was the question?
I'm not sure, it's an observation, I think, by then. About it being a parallel world, I suppose, or
yes, a parallel world. It's exotic. It's really exotic world. It's wonderful to read this text. I still like to read the text when the Bundesverfassungsgericht, what is this in English? Constitutional, they have to decide for a problem, and then when they die Begründung, the reasoning about, I like to read this.
When you then decided you did need to go to art school, some art schools famously have rules, and art is about learning certain rules and then perhaps breaking them. Others, the model is the kind of fluidity. There's almost the opposite of there being no rules, and one learns to be an artist almost in flux. How was your experience? Because I want to talk about Beuys later. I know you weren't a student of his, you went to see him, but was the art school you were at very much affirming certain academic laws, or was it mainly fluid?
No, not at all. The experience I made, I had the most wonderful time when I started the art school. It was in Freiburg, it was in the Provence, and it was a part of Karlsruhe, of the art school. And my teachers said to me, you can do what you want. I came from the art school, and then somebody told me I can do what you want, really what you want. And this was a new experience for me, because I was grow up in a very strict household, and then I had the law school, and there was someone who said you can do what you want. It was fantastic.
How did your encounters with Boyce come about then? Because one of the myths is that he taught you, and I know that's not the case, but were you aware of his influence and what he was doing when you were at art school?
No, I didn't know him when I was in art school. I was, until 71, I was on this art school in the province. And then I heard about Boyce in 71. Before I didn't, because he was really reclusive. I knew about Fontana, about Paul Klee, about Kandinsky, about all this. It was really a little bit like enclave, this in south of Germany, Freiburg, you know. And then later I heard about Boyce in 71.
It's interesting because in one of the catalogue essays that has just been written that you'll all be able to read in September, Christian Reikoff makes the point that you were involved in one of those celebrated rituals that Boyce enacted that I don't think anyone knew about, or rather I don't think we knew now in the 21st century that you were involved, but you were involved in the kind of brushing of the forests.
Yes, it was I think it was in 72 or so. And Boyce wanted in those times to be the chef of the Green Party, and he started to do all kind of actions in the Green Party spirit. So there was planned to do a tennis court in the forest, you know, and he wanted to preserve the trees, and we had to paint the trees with white color, and we balayé, we swept the floor of the wood, so this was green.
Were you environmentally motivated? Did you agree with Boyce's politics?
I was against this politic. I was against the direct democracy. I'm really against. I'm still against because I think that's the end of the world. You know, when you manage a country following the with what is this, polls? No, with
polls, yeah, polls.
Polls of everything, it doesn't work. It's not steady. It can be really extreme. It's not good. I'm against direct democracy.
Did you argue with Boyce about that?
Yeah. I said to him, go to Appenzell, and you are happy there are no women's. Because they had always direct democracy in Appenzell, but without the women's.
And what about art? Did you argue with Boyce about art? What were the conversations you had with him about art?
I was not so much arguing, I was hearing, because he had extreme culture. He knew all, and he could really help you. And he was the first who looked at my work in a real professional way, without moral involvement. And he just looked at these photos when I conquered the other countries. He just said, it's a good action. So, and then I said to him, but look, they think I'm a neo-Nazi. He said, you know, you are not. Your attitude is completely wrong. And he showed me how it should be.
Were you seduced by his cult of personality? I mean, did you find him very charismatic? You know, the shaman in Boyce. Did you respond to that? Did you reject that?
No, I thought immediately when I met him the first time, he's the biggest artist of the 20th century.
And do you still feel that?
Yes, I'm convinced. It's clear.
What about your own artistic heritage? Where do you locate yourself in a kind of lineage of Romanticism, of German Romanticism? Is that one strong strand that we might make sense of your work in terms of?
It depends what you mean with romantic. You know, romantic of Novalis, or it's a philosophical system. It's not feeling, it's not emotional. You know, when you say you have a romantic night or you meet a girl or something, I don't mean this. I mean that's things that all what you give out comes back. That you are in allem enthalten. That you are that you're part of everything. This romantic is not Buddhism, but it has a lot to do with Buddhism.
Yes. Do you still have any trace of religious belief? You mentioned your Catholic upbringing. Is your view of human spirituality a kind of pluralistic one that is connected with this big flow, or are there still traces of Catholicism, do you think, in your spiritual makeup?
No, I think that the really best religion I found is in India, the Hinduism. When you go there and you say you want to be Hinduist, they say you, no, stay where you are. Because each religion is as good as the other. So this is really wise, because we cannot find the real religion. We cannot, because we don't know what the truth is, the deeper truth. So they know that there's no truth, there's no dogmatism.
Is art a surrogate religion, do you think? Do you think people treat art in the same way that they do religion, some people?
No, art is not the same as religion. Art has one part of the art is the same as in religion, that's a mythology. So that's the mythology tries to explain the world as a whole thing. Though science has always parts of the world. They can explain this, they can explain this and this. And the mythology tries to explain the whole world, like Robert Flatt, for example. He was here in England. he combined the microcosm with the macrocosm. He did something what Einstein never could succeed during his life on a mythological way. The mythological way is a way that every century has to find out his own language to explain the mythology. So in this way, art is similar, not similar, but it's like religion, but not the same.
It's interesting you mentioned Robert Flood. I mean, you mentioned his microcosm and macrocosmic view. So there's a 17th century mystic. You mentioned Hegel. We know that you're very interested in and have worked almost in a kind of conversation with various poets, Paul Celan, Ingeborg Bachmann, and so on. I once made the mistake of asking about your daily routine, and you then said, well, yes, I get up at 5 o'clock, I have coffee, I have breakfast, and you went through your whole routine. But what I'm trying to get to now is reading must have a strong element. It must be a strong element of your work as an artist. Do you get up and read every day? Do you take weeks off to study? When you encounter someone that interests you in a new way, do you immerse yourself in that, or is reading part of the daily work in the studio?
It's not daily work, but it's in the morning when I get up, I go to my bibliothèque, and normally I take out a book without looking at it, and it's mostly the right book. It's like a dog, A dog finds his trace. You don't know why, but he finds you, And I find my book. I find it's not every day, but I find very often the book I need, And then I read there until I'm shocked about something, and I stop because I cannot read anymore. I'm so emotional then, and then I start to work, to paint. Yes.
With poetry, sometimes when people call paintings poetic, it can be very nebulous, but there's nothing nebulous about your work that involves itself with poetry. What does poetry give you specifically as a painter? When you make a series of poems about Celan, is it a kind of conversation? I mean, that's not possible in a sense, but is that how you see it? What is the relationship between your work and the poet Celan, for example, or Bachmann?
There are two things. The one thing is a poem is a concentrate. It's like a diamond. It's concentrated. It's concentrated energy. It's something you cannot find in the world. It's something erratic. It's like a meteorite or something really unique. A poem, and so this is important for me to. I have my poems like like a network,
Yes.
like a network. But the other thing is what you ask is what my discussion is with them. And there is a real discussion with Ingeborg Bachmann, with Paul Celan, with other poets, Robert Musil, because I asking them what they think about what I'm doing. And it's really hard sometimes, yes.
What? No, this idea that you ask them, and I mean, how do they reply? I'm not asking literally, we know they can't, but is the reply in the physical act of what you're doing, or is it a detached analysis of what you've done? I mean, do you think, what would they think about what I'm doing, or does it physically manifest itself in the process of as you go on and paint?
No, they say it's shit, and then it's difficult. Then I have a how to say, brings me down, you know.
Yes.
And then I have to recover to come back.
Your process of making art, it's very varied. I mean, we will see in the exhibition, but I think everyone knows that you've made books, you made watercolors, you paint on a small and a very large scale, you make installations, you make sculptures, you've made an entire Gesamtkunstwerk, a whole environment at Barjac, which I want to talk on in a minute. But just to distill all of that, does the process of making, is it something that you find physically and emotionally immersive? In other words, is it something that's all enveloping for you, or is it something that is more strategic, that you're stopping and looking and stopping and looking, or does it take you over?
It's all together. So when I start, it's first very direct, it's very emotional, it's I'm in the materia, I'm in and I do something. And then when there's a certain, I reach a certain state of the painting, then I go back and look and I have a discussion with the painting, how I can go on. And so it's always a different strategy. Once I'm in and once I'm out, and then look at it and analyze it.
There's also a variety of different things that you do to the work. Sometimes they're left outside. Sometimes I've seen you with flamethrowers or hose pipes or axes. Is painting fundamentally violent for you? Is there a violent undertone in a lot of what you do? Is that how you describe it?
I think I have a big war in my head all the time. Because when you start a painting, then you have, after a certain time, you have to decide how you go on. This way or this way and this way. And it is really hard to decide. Because each time you lose 100 other possibilities behind. And you never know if what you choose is the right thing. So it's always a big battle in my head when I do this. And this battle shows also in physical actions against the painting.
Can you reflect on the fact, you said there's 100 different ways of doing it. Once you choose a path, do you ever reflect on what you might have done, or is the path is the only way that you will go? In other words, do you have regrets, or do you think, no, I need to stop and go back, or do you let the path or the process take you on the journey?
No, you cannot back. If you decide one way, then you have to go. Then you cannot go back, because the starting point is no more there. You know, it's like to spring in the cold water. So for this reason, I put the painting sometimes outside or put them in electrolysis and to let them alone, to decide alone what they want to do, because sometimes it's too much.
Are you interested in the Sublime? I mean, this again is an idea from Edmund Burke in the 18th century, but it's also a romantic idea.
I've heavy words today.
We do, yeah. It's an august institution with an august audience. Does the because this idea of awe or terror and the violence of elemental forces is something that you've certainly harnessed, but is the Sublime a sensation or a sensibility that you're interested in conveying or exploring in the work itself?
If you say Sublime, I think more on music. I think the composers, the music is more developed than my art. I would like to be a composer because it's a more abstract and more emotional even art, I can imagine. So the music is sublime, I would say. This is not sublime.
It's interesting that you have brought up the kind of the idea of not a competition, a competition with other art forms, a feeling that for you music is more advanced in certain areas. Let's talk briefly about architecture. As we're in a wonderful gallery, we're actually in an architectural exhibition because you have made, well, let's start. You've worked in 3 extraordinary studios over the last 3-4 decades. One in southwest Germany that was an old brick factory that you left with works and installations in it. The second, which is the most extraordinary, at Barjac, down in the south of France, this network of tunnels and of pavilions and of an amphitheatre and of towers, some of which were like the 2 you put here in the Royal Academy courtyard in 2007. And now you're in Poissy, on the edge of Paris, in a vast 35,000 square metre former repository for a well-known French clothes firm, Saint-Maritain. So you're confronting and using and harnessing architecture. You talked about the battle in your head. Do you find those studios, is it a conflict with architecture, or is it working with architecture?
No, with architecture I have no conflict, except when I see a building in a town, what I see very often, what is very ugly, that's possible. But if I move in somewhere, I have no problems. And I did some kind of architecture. It's not really architecture because I'm not an architect, but there I had not to decide anything. I did the amphitheater, you saw it. So I put containers, sea containers together. I let a little gap between, and then I put the concrete in, so I had a wall. So I did, out of these sea containers, I did a real building. And I hoped, without any architect, without any engineer, and I hope it will move with the time a little bit, because I did no foundation. That doesn't move, So I like to do that, because when I was a kid, I had no gadgets. Gadgets or?
Gadgets, yeah.
Gadgets. I had nothing. I had only the bricks of the bombed houses around, And I did houses with them. I did several floors. So this was a kind of architecture, without architects.
And what about the pavilions? For example, at the Grand Palais, you constructed 7 pavilions in which your work was displayed, as well as the towers. Barjac, as I've said, has these pavilions. In Poissy, your new studio, you've built a vast pavilion that actually is bigger than this gallery. Just about. It is bigger than this gallery.
No, I wanted to show to galleries how to do a gallery. Okay. This is the archetype of a gallery. It's 20 meters high, and it's a little bit narrower than high, so I like the old Renaissance churches. And I think it has the right proportions, and I wait that the galleries follow this example.
I think throwing a gauntlet down to your various gallerists is obviously, we can see that would be a motivation. Good for you. But what about the idea of trying to create environments? Is there a sense that you want to create or control the space in which your art is created?
You mean to control?
I'll come on to exhibition spaces like this in a minute, but in Barjac, you create these spaces as almost self-contained places in which works of art are installed as standalone installations.
Yes, the houses are like a skin around the painting or around the sculpture. It's a skin, or it's a semi-permeable skin.
Yes. So environments, but porous environments that are connected with a kind of network. So if you had the opportunity of building a standalone building to house your work, would that interest you?
What kind of building?
No, if you were given the commission in a public space to build a building, as well as, in which to install your art, would that interest you?
First, I would ask an architect. And then if it's not good, I would discuss. because I don't know nothing about security and all this stuff. I don't know, you know.
It's good, a very diplomatic answer, and probably the right answer in this context. Let's finish, as it were, with these spaces that we're in now. Do you have a sense of different spaces fundamentally changing the way you see your work? Or is there always a kind of conversation between the spaces in your work, or does your work always seem to dominate for you? I'm curious as to how you see your work in different kinds of contexts or different kinds of places, or whether that's something you cannot think about and don't think about.
No, I think for me it's very interesting that my paintings go out in other places. So for exhibition or for a museum, they buy it or so. Because then they get another environment and they change. And it's good for me also to control them, if they are finished or not finished. And very often when I do a show in a gallery, I took some paintings back. And the galleries don't like this because they cannot sell it. I took it back because I think it's not finished. And this I found out in place.
So actually, exhibiting is something that doesn't feel like an end. It feels like part of the process, and it actually, in some ways, makes you want to change the work or continue to work on the work.
Yes, it's absolutely right. Sometimes I want to bring back half the exhibition, you know.
Obviously,
so you have to go compromise with our galleries because he paid for the transport and all this, you know.
Obviously, any of our lenders who are watching on the live stream, we promise at the Academy that Anselm won't start amending the work that's been lent. But you do have the opportunity here, and you're going to take this opportunity to build or to create installations of new work in the Academy. Now, I think we can talk a little bit about that in detail, but I think it'd be good to wait for the show. But I think people are curious as to how you would approach spaces like this.
No, I think in a space like the Royal Academy, I would not create walls. I would leave it like it is, because I like it very much. It's a well-proportioned building. It has nice walls. It has nice proportions, and I would play with this. I hope not to do one wall. Yeah.
So you're not going to build spaces within the Royal Academy spaces. You're going to use the spaces that exist.
Yes, I want to use the spaces as they are, because they are great.
So, what will the installations that you're going to do here, how do you see them fitting into the idea of a retrospective? We have a retrospective. Will you be making new work that re-explores work that you've made in the past in a conscious way, or are you forgetting that and making almost self-contained new work in a way you would for a show that was standalone, only dealt with new work?
No, what I do now is always connected what I did 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's always connected. You cannot say it's a line up and then you have the top thing on and forget the rest.
No, I understand that. That was badly put by me. What I mean is, has the process of trying to make a retrospective together with Kathleen, the curator, has that made you think about your past in ways you haven't done recently, or are you unaffected by the fact that you're doing a retrospective? You're still working in ways you would have worked in anyway?
No, it's true. As a first, it's very boring to a retrospective, because you see always your old paintings. But then it's a chance too, because then you can do the connection between, in my case, it's now, how much, 40 years or so. And you can do a connection with 40 years before, and perhaps you learn something. It's possible, I hope.
That's my final question, really. What do you hope realistically to achieve with this exhibition from a personal point of view? Is it part of a journey of learning?
No, I hope that the public, people, the critics, and they don't think that I do only big bombastic paintings, that I do other things too, that I'm involved in watercolors, in books. 60% of my work is books, all the time, still now. But there is there's a rail going, you know. They think I do just the big paintings, and that's not true. And then I will prove here that I'm more multi-talented.
Yes, and spatially ranging. I think the answer is kind of watch this space. I think that's what they say. So for the former part of this evening, Anselm Kiefer, thank you.